welcome to Watching the Tudors. I'm Heather.
And I'm Jonathan.
And this is the show where we watch the Tudors and talk about the story and the truth behind the drama. So, like I said, I'm Heather, and I actually have another show, the Renaissance English History Podcast, that I've been doing for going on 9 years now. And I thought it would be fun to go back and watch the Tudors and see what was real, what wasn't real, what was just completely made up. And I thought it'd be fun to do it with my husband.
Yep, and I'm Jonathan, her husband. And I don't have another podcast. And I thought it would be fun to learn about the history my wife so enjoys. And I thought it would be enjoyable to learn about it by watching a television show.
So there's a lot of enjoyment going on.
Yeah, and I don't have to read a whole lot, which is a good thing.
And so the way this works is he asks me questions based on each episode. And we talk about what was true, what was dramatic license, and everything like that. So if you want to get deeper into other Tudor history, you can also go to my other podcast site, which is the Renaissance English History Podcast, which is englandcast.com, or you can learn more about us at watchingthetudors.com as well. So we are now on Season 2, Episode 6, and this is called The Definition of Love. And we really start to see the dissolution of the monasteries come here. And that really excites me because that's something in Tudor history that I really love. And it kind of gives me goosebumps. I kind of nerd out on the dissolution of the monasteries. So we'll have some fun talks about that. You're looking at me.
No, I'm having a similar experience, but with a different storyline.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so this also is like the dissolution of the marriage of Henry and Anne.
Look at that, it's poetic.
Yeah, and I'm loving like every minute of it. Like I feel bad for her as a person.
Yeah.
Just as I kind of like I've always kind of felt bad for her as like a person, mm-hmm. but as like the character like in the story.
Yeah.
Like it's just she's getting.
You don't like her.
No.
I know.
She is reaping what she has sown, mm-hmm. or will soon.
And again, I would like to make an announcement that this is not me being anti-Anne Boleyn. No, I know a lot of the people who listen to this show love Anne Boleyn. Don't send hate mail to me.
No,
you send it to Jonathan. This is all Jonathan.
This is 100% Jonathan.
Yes.
I've come up with these opinions on my own accord.
On your own. Okay. So, do you want to hop in and ask me some questions?
Oh, and just the spoiler alert that we always have is we're obviously going to talk about the episode. So if you haven't seen it and don't want to have it given all away, watch the episode first.
Right.
And we're also going to give away general spoilers like that are going to happen in future episodes that we kind of would figure that you might be familiar with anyways.
Like Anne gets her head cut off.
Like Anne gets her head cut off.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't think she deserves to get her head cut off. So I just want to say that now.
Yeah.
No one deserves to get their head cut off.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you can see it in your heart to grant her that mercy.
In my judgmentalness.
Yes.
Okay. So the speech by the Pope
to
the big group of people.
Yeah, we open with that, and that was in response to the execution of More.
Yeah.
And what was happening there. And I'm not sure that a speech exactly like that took place, but like it shattered Christendom. Like just people could not believe that Thomas More was executed.
That More got killed. So even more than what was happening, the fact that the news that More came out.
Thomas More was famous. He was, a famous humanist, a famous thinker, and a writer. He was this bright light of English culture.
I mean, it would be kind of just thinking about it in terms of today's world. Like things take, let's use America as an example. Like mm-hmm. things are pretty kind of wild in America right now. Mm-hmm. So you'd think people would be, riled up as I imagine they are, mm-hmm. sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I can only imagine if I don't know. I can't really pick a person, but if just like some random loved sort of celebrity type famous person was like killed, it would be like
for not taking the oath of succession for something that was like this moral belief that they had.
That would be a whole that'd be a whole new level of
and so Thomas More was clearly a martyr. He lived up to what he had
and a
wanted.
Good person. Like it's not like they were charging him with treason or some crazy.
Well, I think
they
it
did
kind of
charge him
was
with
that,
treason,
but yeah.
But you know what I mean.
Yeah. And also, the Pope did publicly excommunicate Henry and issued several warnings to Henry publicly that he shouldn't remarry until, and this was before he married Anne Boleyn, but there were times when the Pope would use a public voice like that to issue warnings to Henry, in some part because Henry wasn't taking his letters. Yeah. And so the only way he would send letters, and he would post through the media like that, and he would post letters on cathedrals in France and different places, thinking that they would get to him, so he'd have letters. But that was, kind of his public way of responding to Henry.
Okay. Yeah. And then there was like they intermixed, like during his speech, they were showing scenes of like angry men like
tearing apart the church,
kind of churches during services.
This is what happened during the reign of Edward VI. This is not what happened during the reign of Henry.
And Edward VI is before or after what we're watching?
So this is Henry's son, who not only was very Protestant himself, but had Protestant advisors who were deeply Protestant.
So maybe 30 years in the...
where are we? 1536. We're looking just 15, 20 years.
So they're off by 20 years in a...
Yeah, and they also make it look like Henry. I mean, Henry was never a Protestant. Henry, as much as he wanted to dissolve the monasteries, he wanted to do it so that he could have the money, and as much as he didn't want to answer to the Pope, he didn't want to
bust it up. And
no, those were valuable. Those things were, I mean, the money alone of busting those kinds of things, right? Mm-hmm. And in the reign of Edward VI is where we start to see old ancient frescoes being whitewashed over and altars destroyed and. Because it was the whole thing. I mean, this is like...
Not even just them, just everyone. Like, why do you have to blow up all the nice stuff? Like,
yeah. Well, a lot of, like, monks would hide things. There's really interesting stories about things that, survived through that period because the monks hid them really well and things like that. So this whole smashing of the altars, that really bugged me when I watched that, because that wasn't what was going on right here. Cromwell might have fantasized about that, but it's not something that he could have gotten away with.
It's so weird with
especially this early. Yeah. I mean, like maybe
towards the end of it. Like,
although Henry went back to being Catholic then.
It's so weird for me with this show, for listening to you about what's correct and what's not. Mm-hmm. It seems like it's a rather correct, accurate show. Like to me, it seems like they took the time to actually kind of get things right. Mm-hmm. Except like in some places when they don't, and it's just like way off, and it's like that. Like Like why even put that in there? It wasn't the same time. I guess it's...
I think they wanted to show dramatically how things were changing in England.
Or like what was to come. Yeah. And
foreshadowing. It's almost also like a montage from the South Park movie.
You're going to need a montage.
Gonna need a montage. Or that was the South Park episode where they were learning to ski.
I think it was the South Park movie.
Okay.
Anyways. So the Survey of the Churches by Thomas Cromwell. This is getting
what to say to make me happy.
Riling you up.
No, so Thomas Cromwell is in this position now where he is realizing his secret ambitions, which is to tear down Catholicism. Mm-hmm. And he has the perfect pretense for being able to do it because Henry his chests are empty. He needs some gold in his chests.
So things are just really working out like well. Yeah. Like he's getting power at a good time,
and the thing is, so what he can do. So he did this. He surveyed all of these houses, religious houses, and documented areas where they were not living up to what they were meant to be living up to, which was a place of piety and, monasticism and all this kind of stuff.
Right. You were telling me like they were just like partying.
Yeah, no, they had illegitimate children and just living there. And it's so hard because on one hand, everything that we look at now through history is written through the lens of the Protestants won, right? After Elizabeth I and the church settlement, England is firmly Protestant. Catholics have a really hard time. Catholics were not even allowed to be in Parliament until I think it was the 19th century. Uh-huh. England is firmly Protestant, and that's where we're hearing about these things, is through that history. Yeah. So it's hard to believe all of the stories.
To get an accurate representation.
Right. But they're definitely, and the thing is also, at this point, the church was the largest landowner in England, and every town had its own abbey and, a place for the monks. They provided schools. They provided hospitals. They provided places for, like, hotels. They were
living here in Spain, when you drive through, little towns, it's like that's what there is. It's like the churches. So I can imagine. I mean, that was like the town centered around the church.
Yeah, absolutely. And these monks would, and the nuns, that's what they did. They tended to the sick, and there's beautiful stories of, nuns and monks risking their own lives during periods of plague to, help people and stuff like that. And for many towns, that was their school. That was their hospital. So there was, and we'll see this later in the next season with the Pilgrimage of Grace, there was a huge, like, in a lot of places, the further from London that you got, the more people rejected this idea and saw more importance with the monks. And
the churches. And it wasn't like they were just, like, it was like some, country estate. I mean, it was like the town school.
Later on in 1530, late 36 into 37 was the Pilgrimage of Grace, when the North just blew up. Tens of thousands of people just rebelling in favor of their monasteries. Cromwell did have lots of records of people who were not living up to this ideal. Yeah. So there is the case, and that story about the duck's blood is true. And there are stories about where, he said there was this vial that it was meant to be like the virgin's blood. Yeah,
and it was duck's blood. Yeah.
And that was documented. Another one that is kind of funny is he said, if you added up all of the pieces of the True Cross in England, like all of these houses that said they had pieces of the True Cross, like it literally was like a house full, of all of these shrouds of the two and their shards. And that was just in England. So, all over Europe, people, and that was a way that they made money, so they made money off of rents, they made money off of tithes, and they made money off of charging pilgrims.
People would come see
Yeah, and they would ask for a blessing, and they, the same way we kind of go into churches and light a candle and stick a euro in the box or whatever, people would come and pray to the Virgin's blood and give them some money. And so, that's that story. So that's what we start to see here.
Okay. And then you talked about the fake relics a little. That was my next question. And then my next question was about the plays. Like, was that a thing? Like the actor play? Like, is that a thing?
The birth of Elizabethan theater right here too.
I mean, like, it just seemed it was like a government propaganda play, basically.
Well,
like,
okay. It wasn't exactly like that, but yes. So in the past, what had been theater previous under that were mummers shows. Okay. And you still see that, like, there's mummers parades in Philadelphia and stuff like that, and it's like religious people who are the mystery plays as well. That's what they're also known as, mystery plays.
Okay. And I don't know what those are, but whatever.
Well, there are plays that tell a religious story, the kind of thing you put on a church now, like the nativity scenes and stuff like that. Those would be considered like old-time mystery plays.
Okay.
And so they had always existed like that. But during the Reformation, people wanted to try to take that and take the religious pro-Pope aspect out of it, and did turn it into Protestant propaganda. So there were very similar plays to that. But then the other thing is it became more secular in general. So that's where you start to have room for, in later generations, Ben Jonson and Shakespeare and all these people coming up. The whole theater just kind of took off once it was freed from the necessity to have it be religious.
I see. Yeah.
And the other part that I think is really ironic, if you go even further to like the end of the Elizabethan period, the Protestants didn't like the theater anymore. And once the Puritans, which is the extreme end of Protestantism, is the Puritan, that's like the crazy, that whole end of that spectrum, not necessarily crazy, but that end. Yeah. They hated plays because they were seen as, too...
like entertainment type, yeah.
And once they had power during the English Civil War, they actually closed all the theaters. And I just think it's interesting because it was like the Protestant Reformation that made the Elizabethan theater
Yeah.
that they hated so much. So anyway, that's kind of where we start to get that.
Okay.
Yes.
Were they? So then there was like the scene where George Boleyn and Cromwell and Cranmer were all walking together and chatting about like, you know, being anti-Catholic. Like, were they a little clique? Like, did they kind of gang up on the Catholic Church together?
Well, it still wasn't safe at this point to call yourself a Protestant. So, I mean, even until the end, I think it's really interesting that
still kind of like hush hush, like
right. And some of the last people, because Henry was always saying all along he wasn't a Protestant. He was still a loyal subject of the church. It's just the Pope was screwing him.
So was everyone kind of playing like the funny game, like we all know what's happening, but we can't like say it?
Well, on the Protestant side, they were, yeah.
I mean, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Like they were all like, I mean, they were going around saying, yes, we'd really like to clean up this Catholicness that we're kind of supporting, even though they totally don't, and they just want to take everyone down.
Right. And they did refer to him as the Bishop of Rome. So they stopped calling him the Pope. So they would start to refer to him as the Bishop of Rome, like they do in the show. But, you know, Henry, till his dying day, believed that he was a good son of the church.
What a weird game. I mean, so, like, did he not see that he was, like, opening the door to all, like, the other people that weren't on his level? Like,
I think he thought he could contain it, you know? I don't know. He's the king, right? So he gets to...
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting because I forget whether they show it here, but... towards the end of his life, some of the last people that he killed, one was a Protestant and the other one was a Catholic, and he killed them both for heresy. And it's like, how does that? How can you kill both a Catholic and a Protestant for heresy in the same like I can imagine them, like usually when people were like,
you can't kill both of us.
Like, but I also think like usually when people were burned, like, and you see during the Marian martyrs, they would like kind of shout out like to each other, like, you know, have faith. We're going to see each other in heaven very soon. And, you know, we can get through this and all this kind of stuff. And
you mean he killed him at the same time? Like, I mean, oh.
Like, I just can't like, okay, I shouldn't be killed, but you should. Yeah. And the other one, like, you're going to go to hell. I'm going to go to heaven. Yeah. Like, you know, like, and that's what it's so hard when you look at these religious tensions, because we see it now through this belief that we have of religious freedom, religious tolerance. And even the Protestants didn't want religious tolerance. They wanted religious tolerance for themselves, but not for the Catholics. And the Catholics didn't want it for the Protestants. And each side firmly believed that the other side was going to go to hell. And like they felt it like in their marrow, you know, like it was just part of the belief system that they were right and the other side was wrong. And I find that fascinating that you can go through this period where you go Catholic, Protestant, you know, like crazy. And each time, like I am fascinated by like what the average person would have thought. Like, I'm just trying to not get killed. Like, I'll say whatever you want me to say. But, and that's where, I think I said it before, that's where crossing your fingers comes from. Because people would cross their fingers when they were saying, like,
it'd be so confusing. Like, you know, scary looking men with swords, like, come and they say, like, we're going to ask you some religious questions. And you're like, well, can you first tell me what side you're on so I can adjust my answers? Like, I don't even care. Like, what do you want me to say so you don't chop me up? I don't, like, whatever.
Yeah.
I have parts of my family who think the other parts of the family are going to hell because they're different kind of Baptists than the other ones.
Yeah.
So it's all foreign to me. It's wild. It's not foreign, but I don't get it. Printing press.
Okay, that was another thing I just had to I couldn't take it.
Yeah.
I couldn't take it.
So did they not just invent the printing press?
The first printer in England was William Caxton. He was during the reign of Edward the Fourth.
Wait,
Richard
and so you were just saying Edward the
Sixth
was his son, so the Edward the Fourth would be like grandfather. A few generations.
No, because Edward the Fifth was one of the princes in the Tower. He only reigned for like a week before his uncle killed him. Now I'm going to get hate mail from Ricardians. I'm sorry. He probably killed him. There's no proof.
Whatever. Just move on. You're not listening that close.
Okay. So Edward the Fourth and his wife Elizabeth Woodville, and Elizabeth Woodville was an early patron of Caxton. Also, her brother Lord Rivers was one of the earliest writers and person who supported the printing press. And we're talking in the 1480s, 1470s.
It's like 50, 60 years off.
Yeah. And so, obviously, Henry VIII, Elizabeth Woodville was his grandmother. He would have known about the printing press. Yeah. Obviously, this is not new technology. But I think they brought it in here to show that this is a period where people did start to utilize. I mean, the printing press blew everything up in Europe and made these ideas spread. It's like confusing. The internet.
I mean, so why not have the scene and just, have it be like, hey, look, we're using the printing press to print out these things instead of it being like, look at this new invention. It's just funny. It's like, I'm just surprised they didn't. Well, maybe there will be. Next season, they'll be like, hey, we invented the television.
Right.
And it's like, what? No,
you didn't.
It's like, we're hundreds of years off.
Yeah. So
they're just testing us to see how bad our history is.
Right. Yeah. So that the printing press did change everything for religious ideas.
It was a big deal.
It was kind of like the internet. Suddenly anybody can find information, and but it was not new at this period. I mean, it was not something they wouldn't have known.
So then, was it real that they wanted to marry Elizabeth?
Yeah,
the French.
There were talks for that. Mm-hmm. And that would have been perfect for Anne because she was raised in the French court. And so giving her legitimacy and everything like that, it would have been
would have been a good match.
Yeah. But see, the thing is, once, has Catherine died yet? No, Catherine's just on her deathbed because he was asking. All right, I've skipped
Catherine
around.
was going to die. I mean, I guess everyone dies, but
yeah.
I really like that Catherine.
Once, and I'm not sure how they are with
She's
the way
they're. She's such a strong woman.
Yeah. Once Catherine dies, the threat of war from the Empire is suddenly lessened, and Henry doesn't feel like he's pushed into having to have an alliance with France anymore. But at this point, she would have Are you crying?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
No. I maybe feel like it, but no.
Okay. So and it was snubbed, and it kind of played out pretty similar to how it did in here, and it was also another slap in the face for Anne.
Okay. Then we have the scene where Henry was sort of being haunted by More.
Yeah.
And I guess my question was not necessarily literally if he was haunted by his ghost, but was Henry kind of haunted by More like the rest of his life?
I think he always felt, and especially after Anne didn't give him a son, and after he realized that his marriage to Anne
talk about something you can't take back. I mean, it's like one thing destroying the church as you know it, but it's another thing like killing your buddy. Killing your buddy. I was talking about it with Heather. I don't know. I don't think Dave would ever listen to this, but I have a good buddy, my old buddy Dave. I can't imagine killing Dave. I mean, it's I can't imagine what he would do and damn him. I mean, it's excommunicate him, send him to Australia, kill him, damn.
Yeah, so I think Henry always felt, but at the same time,
killed his buddy.
But at the same time, More made it so hard for him to not, and the two of them.
Just send him to Russia. Tell everyone you killed him. I don't.
Yeah, but then
it's your buddy.
I mean, he seemed as if he would not go quietly. I hear you. I hear you.
You're not going to talk me into this.
No, and Dave, you're safe. Don't worry.
I'm not going to kill you, Dave.
We love you, Dave.
Right.
Dave is the artist who makes the sketches of the Tudor women on my shop. I have a shop, tudorfair.com. Look at how I work that in there. He's a very talented artist, and he's made some sketches of some amazing Tudor women, the Kick-Ass Tudor Women collection. And you can go to it at tudorfair.com.
Nice.
Thank you, Dave.
How do you spell Tudor? F-A?
F-A-I-R. Tudor F-A-I-R.
Nice. What was the deal with the marriage of George Boleyn?
That is a question that people have been wondering for 500 years.
All right, because that seemed really weird.
Yeah.
And he's gay, or...
And to start with also, they didn't just get married here. They got married somewhere around 1524 or 25. So they'd been married for a while at this point.
Yeah.
I think the biggest evidence that there was a problem was that she gave evidence against
because you were telling me she ends up testifying against everyone.
Yeah. But at the same time, how much of that is just her preserving? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
And
we don't know. And that's not the kind of thing people would document. Really.
And the other thing is that they were married for 10 years and they never had any children. So that's another thing to look at is were they really that? But, maybe they couldn't have kids. Maybe it was like a heartbreak to them that they couldn't. There's actually a book that I'm reading right now that is historical fiction, but she tries to paint Jane Jane is historically seen as this really horrible person because
that's George Boleyn's wife.
She's going to lose her head because she enabled Catherine Howard's indiscretions several wives from now. Okay. And so there's this kind of view that she's this busybody who gets in the way of everybody and just is out for herself and blah, 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 blah. And I'm reading a book right now that tries to paint her in a different picture, and it's interesting. And she actually tries to show that the marriage was very loving. But, the evidence is really sparse either way. But, yeah.
Yeah. And then there was the Henry Norris guy who came to ask King Henry for permission to pursue Madge,
who had been Henry's mistress.
And these are real people that we actually
Henry Norris
know exist.
He's going to die.
Okay.
Yeah. So he was
for that, or
no? They said that he was with Anne Boleyn. He's one of the men that gets framed for being with Anne Boleyn. So this
so it's kind of for that. I mean, maybe not necessarily for that, but if he would have fancied someone else, he might not have gotten killed.
Possibly, yeah, because he wouldn't have been in the if he didn't spend so damn much time in the Queen's bedchamber.
I mean, I guess that's what
then he wouldn't have gotten killed. But he was after Madge. She was in the Queen's.
You just need to stay.
You
stay
can't
away
touch
from
any of those women.
When there's explosive situations, you just need to back away.
Yeah. Don't date. Find yourself a nice country girl. You don't need to be dating Madge Shelton.
Just move back.
Yeah.
The Boleyns made Cromwell.
So that
was during that play, and the Thomas Boleyn was saying, "Oh, the best thing we ever did was make you, rise you up or whatever to Cromwell." What I don't. Did they? I don't really.
I mean, because he's the one
because the Boleyns kind of tore down Wolsey, right? So that kind of opened the door,
and also because they were Protestants and they knew that Cromwell shared their beliefs,
and they were kind of feeding it, they were kind of feeding the Protestant thing through.
And Cromwell's the one who was eventually able to figure out how to get the divorce.
Okay,
and so
it wasn't necessarily they picked Cromwell as their guy. And were pumping him up as much as it was that they just allowed
him to rise.
They made the situation so that he could.
And the great irony is that he will also make the situation that has them fall. He's in it for Cromwell.
Yeah, I'm cool with that. Except that Thomas Boleyn gets out of it, right?
He does.
It's just wrong. He's a bad man. Power struggle in front of Brandon. That was awkward with the king and the queen, and so that was Brandon came to ask and say, is it okay if I, escort the French?
Henry asked him to receive the French.
Yeah, and then she said, "What? Why wasn't me?"
Yeah.
So we obviously we have no idea if they argued about that particular thing. No. But in general, was stuff getting would they get? I mean, would that even happen? In kind of quote unquote public?
It was starting to happen like that in public. Yes, there were starting to be scenes. There was starting to be a lot of rumors that. I mean, as early as 1535, Henry started having these rumors saying he wished he hadn't married Anne. And
when I don't remember years, how long after their marriage is this?
Well, they got married in 1533.
Okay, so in 33 they married, and already within 2 years they're having people
and
say
that's a year before she died. So for a whole year, it wasn't it was just a quick personality change. Okay. For a year, he had been saying
it was building up, and
yeah.
Yikes.
Yikes indeed.
You can see the writing on the wall.
Well, Anne can't. She needs to behave herself a little bit better.
No, she can't. Well, I mean, I feel like she can, but she can't control herself.
She can't. Well, I don't think she can believe that it could happen. She's the chosen one, He left he got excommunicated for her.
For her. Yeah, because she told him to, and because she was holding out, But that's the thing. Once you give up that power, then you don't get that power.
It's very different to be a mistress than a wife,
yes,
right?
Indeed.
Although we're as much in love as we were 12 years ago.
Yes, of course.
We are. Stop it.
Chapuis is quite disturbed by all these occurrences.
Is. Well, it's his religion getting torn down.
I can't even imagine, like, being in a country that, or, you know, working like that. Like, that's, it's cool. Like, everything's good. And then all of a sudden it's like, you know, it's like burning effigies of your people. Like,
yeah.
And it just changed. Wow. So, all right. And then what is the Anne's pinky thing? I was confused by that. I didn't know what was happening.
So this is the first time they bring it up in this show, I guess, that she has a sixth finger. Never during her lifetime, but towards the end of the 16th century, this rumor started by grandchildren of somebody, blah, 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 that she had a sixth finger on her finger, a sixth pinky finger on her hand. Mm-hmm. And, you know, some historians, Alison Weir is one of them, who still portray her with the sixth finger. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't necessarily a whole finger, but it was like the beginnings of a nail. Yeah. She had something like the beginnings of a finger or some kind of a fingernail. Now, there's no contemporary talking about this at all. The fact that they start to bring it up here, that would start to be evidence of witchcraft. And that is eventually what's going to be pinned on her, is calling her a witch. So the idea that you might have a devil's mark, for example. And I think they also talked about her moles and stuff, that she had moles. And those were all seen at the time period as being devil's marks. And so, you know, this is starting to set up the idea of calling her a witch. And again, this is not contemporary, though. They did not bring up this sixth finger in her lifetime. Yeah. This was afterwards. People were talking about it.
Okay.
Although the thing that I think they say might make it more probable that it's true is it was talked about under the reign of Elizabeth, who was her daughter. So you would think if it wasn't true, they wouldn't bring that up.
Yeah,
so,
or it would be denied.
You know, that's, I guess, what's in the pro side of believing that she had something. Mm-hmm. You know, it's very possible she just had some kind of weird mark there. You know, who knows? But that's what people said. She had this sixth finger.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not sure that the king would have chosen a woman with a sixth finger.
I don't think so. I don't think it'd be like, oh yeah, come here, rub me with your little freaky finger sticking out. Like, no offense to people with extra fingers. That's cool.
You're not anti-extra fingers?
No, I just want to make it clear that I've always been pro
extra fingers.
Extra extremities.
Yeah.
So then there was a scene with Cromwell sitting around his desk going through all these letters from people. Like, what were those letters? Who were writing them?
He was encouraged. So he had a spy network. Similar. We often think that the first spy master in England was Francis Walsingham under Elizabeth. But
I've often thought that.
I know you have. We debate that, right? But in truth, Cromwell had a spy network. I wouldn't say every bit as sophisticated, but pretty sophisticated. And he would encourage people to tell on their neighbors. So if you saw your neighbors doing something that was too popish, you should write to one of his agents or whatever and report on them. It's 1984, only in 1534.
And so you might, if something is found and you uncovered something, like, you might get like a loaf of bread or
some reward or something. Yeah, so people were
some people were just telling on each other.
Yeah. So if you had an argument with your neighbor, for example.
Yeah, exactly. Like your neighbor, you've been arguing about some fence.
Oh, John still has his rosary.
40 years, right? And it's like, yeah. So then the French ambassador rolled into town, or whatever. Mm-hmm. His outfit was just out of this world, and I believe I've asked you this before, but to check in again.
Yes.
Like, these are somewhat accurate depictions of what these guys would wear. And I know this wasn't what people were wearing in the streets, but like, would the French ambassador have been wearing that wild getup? Yeah.
Now look, this is we're looking at a Holbein portrait of Henry VIII here. This is what a typical what Henry would have wanted.
Yeah, but that's the king. I mean, like that dude. Yeah,
but I mean that's the fashion. Smooth. People are gonna emulate the king in their fashions. You want your ambassadors to look really good to show your wealth.
No, that makes sense. So those ambassadors might be like the best dressed dudes.
Yeah,
that
because
there are,
it's like,
just
look
because
how
that's
wealthy my people
who's shown.
are.
Yeah, this is just some guy. I just threw this together.
Is the jewels down the side of his...
Oh, and the fabrics and stuff. That's what I'm just amazed at with those...
Deep
with
red.
like the French guy's outfit. Like those fabrics are just like, I can't even imagine how much money like the fabric is worth. Like much less like constructing the actual piece of clothing. And it's really amazing. And were things really, like with Henry and Anne, were things really that snippy? Like what was that argument about?
So she said he went over to get the secretary to introduce her, but he got distracted by the beautiful woman.
Yeah, isn't that? And then he never even said anything at the secretary. Anyways.
Yep. Yeah, no, there were a lot of public outbursts like that.
I just can't. Like,
it was very awkward.
I can't. I mean, I would think that at some point, like someone would. I mean, I guess people didn't like her, but I think someone would lean over and say, like, "Chick, like you're gonna get killed if you don't shut up." Like,
yeah. This is another famous. I think this is Holbein. This is a picture of it's called The Ambassadors.
Oh, they're showing me a picture right now.
I'll add a link in the show notes, and it specifically is it's some specific people, but that they were ambassadors.
He's wearing a pretty smooth outfit. That is not your average. It's not your average dude.
Yep. No. And you know what's interesting about this painting? Yeah. Is, do you see this down here? That's a skull. If you look at it from
a different
angle. Yeah, and it's like one of the first times you see that in art. It's like this weird 3D rendering.
Yeah, I took art history in high school.
Oh, so you recognize this painting then?
I do, and that skull.
And it's a pretty famous one.
Yeah.
So yes, you can see they are nicely dressed.
I know a little bit about art history.
Cool. I got a D in art history.
No other kind of history.
I barely passed art history in college.
Yeah.
You know why? Because it was all slide identification, and I'm not that visual. Like every test was, and it was Italian Renaissance, and it was all like these frescoes of angels. And it's like, I don't know, Angel by Michelangelo.
Oh, gosh, you're missing out.
Angel. Well,
it's just so funny because like I don't understand your fascination with history, but like art history is like fascinating to me, and to hear that you're not fascinated by art history.
Here's the thing, though. So I wasn't then, but then when I lived in London, I worked just off the Strand, right by the National Gallery, and it was free to go in the National Gallery. And I used to think, well, I'm not an artist person. I don't really care about going to the National Gallery. But I thought, well, it's free. I should go in and check it out. And I became so interested in the art.
So then there's also the plot to kill Anne. There was that guy that was like fantasizing about having killed Anne. Like, that's still ongoing. Like,
there's constantly.
There's just everyone. There's always someone trying to kill her.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that's just royal. I mean, that's like leading a world power.
And also,
there's
if you're
someone
that
trying
hated,
to kill you.
Yeah.
But like any president is trying to be killed by someone, huh?
Yeah.
Just humanist.
Yeah.
The king was talking about how he's a humanist deep down, and just. What's a humanist again?
A humanist was somebody who believed in secular education and in studying the classics. You could almost say they were like the educational side of the Renaissance. So there's the art side of the Renaissance, and there's the, different music sides of the Renaissance. They were the educational side of the Renaissance, and the writing, and they wanted everybody to be educated and studying music and arts, and the new classics, the new old, and having access to all of that. And that was pretty much the gist of being a humanist.
Okay.
Why do you look perturbed?
I'm not entirely sure I understand, but
okay. Well, so
I
up
don't
until
know
this
if it's
point,
important.
so for example, up until this point, girls weren't educated at all, and even later in the 17th century, girls would not be educated at all because humanism wasn't such an important.
So
the idea that the human was value, the human was of value. This life wasn't just the stepping point for the next life. This life had value in it right here. And we could learn, and we could make ourselves smarter and become better human beings.
As opposed to what? Like, that's what I'm not understanding.
Oh, as opposed to a king only needs to learn swordcraft and how to hold a shield.
And a normal person
doesn't need to know anything about except how to pick potatoes.
Okay, and a humanist
and a woman doesn't need to know anything except how to do needlepoint. And a humanist thinks you should learn languages, you should learn music. Everybody, as many people as possible, especially women too, should learn music and should learn the languages. They should learn Greek and Latin and, you know, all the different languages. And all of this knowledge is available to us, and we deserve to have it, and we deserve to have this knowledge because we're valuable here now. And this life, we can bring poetry to the world. And
I guess what it is it's hard for me to fathom anything that's not that.
Right. Well, humanism won.
It's a nice thing, but it's wow. Like, I can't imagine that, like, like I'm expanding. Yeah. Like, we're all, like, everyone involved in this podcast is, like, reaping the rewards of humanism winning. Because, like, people listening are learning, and we're sharing information, and I'm learning about history.
And also we can do this on a computer, which is available to everybody, and that's like on a whole new level of humanism winning.
And they can listen, like, by downloading over the internet. And, like,
the internet is humanism.
Dude.
Is your mind blown?
Humanism rocks.
Indeed.
All right, so my last 4 questions are kind of a funny deterioration of
I love this.
Making sense. So we have... French guy didn't meet Anne. Why? Proposal change. Anne is fucked. Dogs. So shall I go through them one by one?
Well,
you just want to...
There were snubs against Anne, and the proposal dropped off. Nothing. I don't know that it was ever that formal, but it became informal really quickly. And there was talk again of Mary, and, you know, nothing wound up happening with it.
No, but they really suggested that. Or do we know? Do we know that
they were talking about that Mary was the legitimate one?
I mean, I just can't imagine, like, hearing that for Anne. Like, how gutting. Like, to me, that's the definition of the term gutting. Like, it would be like gutting to hear that.
Yeah,
it's like, no, we won't. We don't want to marry Elizabeth because she's not legitimate, but we'll marry Mary.
She's the legitimate one.
Oh.
Well, and Mary had been betrothed to them as well.
No, I know. I mean, I understand that, but just in that, like, man.
Yeah.
And then Anne, she's done. I mean, what good? Like, what good is she now? I don't mean, but. And then dogs.
Yeah, there were dogs.
Were there dogs? Like, someone was walking a dog. Like, did people have dogs?
Anne Boleyn had a dog called Porquet. And she said it was because it was always looking up, wondering what was going on. And so she called him Porky or Porquet. People, and later on, Catherine Howard would give Anne of Cleves a Christmas gift of 2 dogs. So people had dogs. And there was a zoo in the Tower.
Did normal people have dogs? Or I would guess, like, shepherd dogs.
Yeah, and people had cats too, and
like for fun, I guess. Like we do. Like, we have pets for leisure.
Yeah, well,
whatever. I don't know why you have a pet.
You would have a cat to chase them,
I love pets,
eat the rats and stuff.
Okay.
But, you know, the real problem of all of this was they would always kill the cats during plague time because they thought that
they were the ones spreading them.
Because they knew they were, like, linked to... Yeah,
because,
you
like,
needed to have the cats to kill the rats.
The cats would have killed all the rats.
Yeah.
And it was the rats. Oh.
Yeah. So there's all these stories about people taking their cats. Like, some people would try to, like, smuggle theirs out because they loved them so much and stuff. But people would have to shoot their animals because they thought it was related to the plague.
And kill the rats.
Yeah. So that's this episode.
That's all.
That's all?
Yep.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoy this show, please leave us a rating on iTunes. It really helps. You can learn more about us at watchingthetudors.com. You can also go to my other podcast, the Renaissance English History Podcast, at englandcast.com, and subscribe to that too. And we'll be back soon with more downfall and dissolution.
Gosh, it's all falling apart. It's been falling apart, but it's really falling apart.
It's really falling apart. Thanks
for listening, everyone.
Thanks for listening. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.